everybody. Welcome to Climb the Ladder for our 43rd episode presented by Washed Up Network. I'm your co-host Hunter, and my equally good-looking twin brother Duncan actually cannot make it today. So sitting in for him is Clayton Panzeri, co-founder of the Washed Up Network and co-host of the Way Out Here podcast. So we're excited to bring you guys to him today, and we are now 1 week into baseball, and we are loving it. Thank you to everybody who always tunes in and listens each week. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes and Spotify. Now you can watch us on YouTube. So head on over there and check us out. And we are always brought to you by Kiko's Coffee and Tea. Use code CTLW at checkout for 16% off your purchase. Well, Clayton, happy to have you today.
I'm happy to be filling in here. Let's go.
I mean, hey, me and my other half, he's not here, and so none other than
I can't do the twin telepathy thing, but we can still do a podcast. I think we can climb the ladder together today and be all right. I'm always down to talk baseball, and we got some March Madness to talk about. So I'm always down to be here. I'm happy I can fill in.
For sure. Well, like I said, we're 1 week into baseball. Opening day was just last Thursday. A lot of action. It's just nice having baseball on all the time, pretty much anytime. It's nice. I was going to say that we kind of touched on before we started recording, but being in Washington, we're both moved back here where we grew up, being on Pacific Coast time in just in Washington, pretty much at lunchtime until you go to bed, there's baseball on. And I just think that is such a perk over anywhere else in the country, because they don't get baseball until 3 or 4 o'clock. And then to watch, nobody's going to stay up to watch a Mariners game, but to watch a Dodgers game or a Padres game on the East Coast, you're up till midnight or 1 o'clock.
Yeah, 100%. I've always said that Pacific time is the best sports time zone by far. Mountain time zone comes pretty close, because during college football, instead of 9 a.m. kickoffs that you see in Pacific time, it's 10 a.m., which is like kind of a sweet spot. But for baseball, it's perfect. I looked at the game times today for East Coast. They're starting at 4 p.m. I saw a 1 o'clock game today. I was watching, an NL East game at 1 p.m. and then I flip on the Mariners. And I think you and I were talking about it actually the other day, being back in Washington, being Mariners fans and listening to the Mariners on the radio.
Oh,
I get it. Like, people want to watch the games, whatever. I grew up being like a radio kid. Like, I would always carry this is not even like being old. Like, I was literally 9 years old carrying around a freaking radio to listen to games. Like, it was amazing. So, hearing Dave Niehaus and Rick Riz, and now still Rick Riz on the radio.
Oh yeah.
That's what I miss the most about like having baseball, because I don't know what it was last year. It just the magic wasn't there, but now you can kind of hear the sounds of, T-Mobile now, where the train goes past. You can kind of hear the rumblings in the crowd a little bit. It just sounds like pure radio now, where last year you could tell that the stadium was empty.
Yeah. And that's such a big difference. And like you just said, Dave Niehaus and Rick Riz, and I got chills because listening to just old games. Even from growing up, while Dave Niehaus was still the guy on the radio, but replays from the 90s, or you're watching Ken Griffey Jr. from his rookie season highlights or whatever. And it just sounds like summer. And so it's so good to have just that fan chatter in the background of the radio broadcast. And yeah, you and I were talking about it on opening night, and we'll have to get into your Root Sports boycott a little bit, but we were.
This was going to be a happy podcast. I have a very, very unhappy things to say about Root Sports. Man.
But we were both texting back and forth as we listened to the radio, and it's just I always used to wonder why my dad was listening to AM radio, but to this day, back in Seattle, 710 AM, that's Seattle's ESPN station, and that's childhood right there, but also just bringing the summer back in. You can almost smell the ballpark through the radio.
100%. You
And
can use your
so,
imagination so much better too. My grandma, I think I've told this on Climb the Ladder, but my grandma literally used to listen to the radio and watch the TV on mute. So she would just straight up mute the TV
oh,
and
it's
have
so
the
much
radio on
better.
because she loves the radio. And so, when she's like cleaning or doing whatever in the house, she's not always watching the TV. So she would just like in her back pocket have the radio on. I was like, that is just the most, like crazy awesome thing I've ever seen. And I didn't
Yeah.
respect it as a kid. Now I'm like, wow, she was the absolute coolest.
Oh yeah, or I mean that's almost the same as the guy that of course it's not even earbuds. They have over the head like headphones at the game with a little pocket radio because they want to listen to
Yep.
the broadcast. And dude, like the way that they paint the picture, like who hit the ball, who it got hit to, like they're talking like on a double play and they say it when the ball hits the guy's glove. Like
Oh yeah.
just the play by play in baseball, like that's something that you can't get in any other sport. It doesn't happen that fast. And people say baseball is not exciting. Get out of here. If you listen to the radio broadcast, you will change your mind.
100%. Also, like understanding baseball, and this sounds like an old head baseball guy thing, but like if you truly understand baseball, you understand that every single pitch matters in some sort. And the best way I can explain it is if you are like new to baseball and think baseball is uninteresting, go online and literally just look at the counts. So like what kind of count it is, whether it's a, 0-0 count, 1-0 count, 1-1 count, whatever, how many balls and strikes there are in the game, go online and see the batting averages for those counts. Once you understand that, every single pitch starts to matter a lot more. Once you
Oh
understand
yeah.
that like batters hit 350 when it's an 0-0 count, but if they have one strike and no balls, it goes down to like a 150 average. And then, a 3-0 count, they have like a 400 batting average. Then you start to understand the game a little bit more to where you're like, okay, wow, this actually does matter. Or you start understanding that there's like home run counts, like a 2-1, 3-1 count where you're like, oh, this could be a home run.
Oh
Like, so
yeah.
you start anticipating some of these things. So, listening to it on radio and hearing the balls and the strikes happen, and then getting excited when some batter, some, 3 or 4 hitter that's a power hitter gets in a good count, you start getting excited because you start understanding that, wow, this ball could go 500 feet right now because, it's just the name of the game. So I think that those are the really important things that people don't realize about baseball. But also, on a side note, no cooler person than the guy in the stands at the game that's wearing the big headphones, also taking score on a scorebook.
Oh yeah, scorebook, hands down. Like those guys die hard. I remember just at the Boise Hawks game, this guy sitting in front of me, like not even like great seats, but he probably had season tickets. And side by side, these two guys, like I went to probably 5 or 6 one summer, and these two guys were both there with their own scorebooks, and they didn't miss a single pitch. Like we're getting up, we're getting beer, we're getting hot dogs. Like these guys probably didn't even go to the bathroom. Like they're watching between innings to make sure they didn't miss anything.
And usually you'd be like, oh yeah, those were scouts. Like, no, they were not scouts. They were there. They've had season tickets for the last 15 years.
Oh yeah.
This isn't recreation to them. Like this is their like 5 to 7, like time that they are away from their wife and kids, and they just sit in the stands doing scorebook. Like that is exactly what it is. No,
Yeah,
it is not a job.
they're paying to be there. They don't even get paid.
Yeah.
But like it's just baseball encompasses so much that other sports doesn't have. Like I love that, just being able to look for different pitch counts and getting excited when a guy steps up to the plate. Like obviously the classic, like when you're a kid and we would do the Ichiro batting stance, 3-2, like full count, 2 outs, bottom of the 9th, bases loaded. Like that's every kid's dream. And so obviously that's so cool when a situation like that happens. But if you have a guy in scoring position and the guy at the plate is like some crazy over 500 on a 2-1 count, against left-handed pitchers or something, like
Exactly.
just to notice those things makes you so much more invested.
Even
And
knowing like, and this is why I do like watching the games on TV sometimes, is they'll show graphics where, Kyle Seager is an anomaly where he hits better off lefties than righties. But normally, if you have a lefty pitcher and a righty hitter, it's advantage the righty hitter. And so understanding the averages of like, okay, if it's a righty pitcher and righty hitter, like they actually hit like 50 points less on average, like those matter. And like those are the fun things to me where, if they go against that, say they're a 150 hitter and they just hit a home run and you're like, dude, this guy never does this. Like that is a cool thing, like that the odds of him hitting a home run are, so much less than some other guy on the team or whatever. And that's what makes baseball awesome. Cause I think that those come into play a lot, and you can call them sabermetrics or whatever, but they're really just understanding the game and growing up with baseball. Speaking of, growing with the game, see, the Mariners are 2-2 as we talk right now, but their first game, extra inning win, electric, absolutely electric.
Love it. And just to see that, like, I mean, they were down 5-0 in the 7th, and then 8th inning, they turn it on. That's usually when, like, okay, it's like 9:30 p.m. time to go to bed. Like, I'll see what the final was in the morning. The other team probably got 2 or 3 more hits, maybe a couple RBIs, and the Mariners maybe got one on a, wishful thinking comeback. But like, they were there to play. It was opening night. It had been a long year. Stadium was packed for as much capacity as they could have with 9,000 fans. But it was just so cool to see them turn it on and like watching highlights. But like I said, we were both listening to the game, and it was just so exciting. Like, even sitting around the radio, like Hannah was into the game too, and we weren't even watching it. And so just like for baseball to be back and just encompass that. But I mean, hey, Mariners are here.
I love it. Yeah. Is there a specific player that you're watching this year for the Mariners?
Man, I mean, just off the top, I'm really glad that Haniger is back because he had surgery. And I think, like, if you're looking at longevity of players other than Kyle Seager, we don't have anybody that's been here for more than a couple of years other than Seager and then Haniger. And I just think he's so good. Like, they had him in the leadoff spot the second or third game, I think. And it's just, he's fun to watch. But as far as like new guys, Kyle Lewis, Taylor Trammell, like those guys I'm really excited for. And I really just want to build with those guys because I think that like this is the end of the rebuilding. And I think that those guys are actually here to play, and it's not just another Mariner stepping stone.
Yeah, I feel like you hear Mariners fans talk about all the time. It's like, no, like we're rebuilding. This is the next year, blah, blah, blah. But you're really starting to see some of these prospects that we've been holding for years and years. And even Taylor Trammell and Ty France, who came from the Padres, which I can, 100% say that we won that trade finally. I forget the catcher's name. He was Tom Murphy.
Yeah. Wait, that we traded away?
Yeah, I believe
Nola.
Oh yes, we traded away Nola. We got Ty France. We got Trammell. Trammell was kind of on the fence. Like nobody knew if he was going to make it to the show. Ty France was going to be a big leaguer. He was hitting like 350 in AAA. And then Trammell got the call up, and he got his first hit on Monday, I believe. And it's been awesome ever since. So super happy for Trammell and super happy that the Mariners are finally getting guys that are performing and actually looking like they can be something. I feel like every time we try to rebuild, in quotes, there's always something that messes it up. Like there's some guy who is supposed to be really good who has like Tommy John, or he comes up to the big leagues and it's like 160 and we figure out he can't hit a slider or something. That hasn't happened yet. So, cross your fingers that doesn't, but it feels like we have so many prospects at this point. There's no way that all of them fail,
Yeah. And I think that for just on the note of rebuilding, I think that there was a period that the Mariners were just bad and they weren't doing anything to fix it, nothing to get better. They didn't really have the attractiveness to go get guys. But I think in the last, especially like 3 years, if not just the last 1 or 2, that they've really been able to attract prospects that can really form into something. Like I would say the rebuilding has just barely started a few years ago, whereas for probably 15 years before that, we were just bad. And that's just how it was. But another guy that I was just thinking of that I don't know if there wasn't much about him prior to the season starting or if I just didn't notice, but watching him when I went to the game on Friday night, Jake Fraley, he just has a swagger about him and he's just fun to watch. And I don't know if I texted you or I was texting somebody and I just zoomed in on a picture of him. He has like just the long baseball hair out the back of his hat. And I was like, this looks like every high school baseball player right now.
That's so true.
Like this guy just made it.
Yeah, no, Fraley's one of those guys that's not a top 100 prospect or anything. He's a little bit older than what we've been accustomed to in the past few years, but he's still going to be an impact player. And that's the difference that you see now in the Mariners of new and from the old. We were not making the playoffs and we had a ton of old guys on the team. We had Felix, an aging Felix. We had Nelson Cruz. We had Robinson Cano, all these old guys and still not making the playoffs. Oh, by the way, our minor league system was ranked like second to last in the major leagues. So not only is your major league team bad, but your minor league team was bad too, which is like impossible to do. You got to be good at one, you either have to have a good farm system and have something, to look forward to, or your major league team has to be super good. There's a rare occasion where, you get the Yankees or the Red Sox that have a good farm system and a good team at the major league level. Mariners had neither, which is incredible to do. It's actually harder to do that than to probably win a World Series, to have top to bottom from major league system all the way down to single A, to have no top 100 prospects, nothing to look forward to, and you missed the playoffs. Like, congratulations, Jack Z, our former GM, of just making a complete dumpster fire of an organization top to bottom.
Yeah, big time, big emphasis on the former there.
Yeah, are you a big fan of Jerry Dipoto? What's your thoughts on our new GM?
I mean, I like him. I've heard good things. I haven't heard a lot about him. I mean, I feel like something's working. Like I was talking about, just getting that attraction back for Seattle. Just like we have to get something to build that energy. We thought it would come with Cano, and I felt like we got a few guys. Like we got Cano, we got Cruz. We were like, okay, we're doing something. Like those guys had already existed in the league. But then, like you say, our farm system was at the time was still second to last, and we need to attract guys that we can bring in and develop, and that they'll have 10 or 12 or 15-year careers, or maybe like they want that Tatis Jr. or that Lindor deal to stay with the organization for a decade. Like that's who we have to attract. And so that's who we have with Jared Kelenic and Julio Rodriguez. Like those guys, they played in spring training all season, and then they stayed down to play until the opening day for minor league baseball. So they get another 2 months of competitive baseball in the minor league spring training. And like, I think that's the development that we've been waiting for and that we really need. And that's finally here.
Yeah, even Jared Kelenic, he was talking about how bad last year was when he would go to the alternate site, where I was actually listening to an interview with Clint Frazier, and he was on a podcast, and he was talking about getting sent down from the Yankees last year, and he called it Area 51 because they had to COVID test every single person every single day, and nobody could go in or out of the alternate site, and people were there for 90 to 120 days. Wow. And so like they brought in food to you, they tested you every day. And he was like, it was actually like you were in a social experiment. And so he only was there for like 18 days or something like that until he got called up again. But Jared Kelenic, he was talking about the same thing where he got sent down to Tacoma in the alternate training site. And he was talking about how brutal it was because all you're doing all day is you're playing like 6-on-6 because there can only be like 12 to 15 people at the alternate site. So you're playing 6-on-6, and sometimes you're only playing like 3-on-3. So there's a pitcher, a shortstop, and a center fielder. And so when they say simulated games, you can't get the juices flowing for 3-on-3.
Right.
Have
Totally.
some like single A pitcher thrown to you, and you think you should be in the majors. So I could totally understand his frustration last year of not being called up or anything like that. I think we're going to see him at the very latest June. I think he's probably going to hit 400 and, the extended spring training, and then, knock on the door of Jerry DePoto's office, and we'll see him in left field in June. But I'm excited about this team. I mean, I think they could probably be close to making the playoffs, hopefully, but
Yeah.
at the very least, it's just exciting to see the future. Like you can clearly tell now what they're trying to do and establish. In the past, you're like, I don't know where we go from here. Like, how do we get better than this? They're all at their peak, Cano
Totally.
hit 40 bombs, Cruz hit 45 bombs, Felix had like a 3 ERA, and we still missed the playoffs. Where do you go from there?
Yeah, exactly. And like that gives me chills when you said just seeing the future right here. Like it's actually here. And with guys like Jared Kelenic who have that competitive spirit, and he's excited and he's eager, and just to see that coming up. And I mean, he'll be itching to play for in the big leagues by the time June rolls around. I think you're right. I think we'll see him in June on the Mariners field. But he'll just be ready. He'll be tuned. I think that he'll literally come in swinging as hard as he can. Like that. I mean, I just think of it like when they say like the guy's first major league at bat and they go yard on the first pitch, like that's ideal. And just to bring that energy, I mean, hopefully the Mariners, I mean, that'll be 2 months in. Hopefully we're looking pretty good in the division. I mean, the A's got swept by the Astros for the opening series, so that helps the rankings just right out of the gate. But
yeah, there's some surprise teams already, and we're only through at the very most. The team that's played the most games has only played 6 games, but there's already some teams that are a little bit shocking that they're winning so many games. I'm just looking at the standings here. Like Cincinnati Reds, the Reds didn't really do anything great inside of free agency. Bauer left. They made a pretty good offer to Bauer, but they signed Castellanos, which I loved. I think that the Cubs were not very smart not keeping him. The Dodgers,
I was pretty surprised by that one. I thought the Cubs would dish out because they dropped off pretty fast after their World Series run. And so I thought that they would try to keep some of those assets that they had.
The Cubs are a team that you could see go from World Series in 2017 back in 2018 to a team that misses the playoffs potentially this year. And again, they're a team that we talked about. Like, where do you go from there? You have have all of the supposed pieces. You have Chris Bryant. You have Anthony Rizzo. You have the guys that need to be playing, but you're still missing the playoffs. And the majority is due to their pitching staff. You look at the Cubs pitching staff and you just look at a 4.5 ERA.
Yeah.
And you're like, if you're not outscoring teams, you're not doing anything. So I don't know, where do the Cubs go from there? Theo Epstein, one of the best front office guys probably of all time. He left. So the Cubs are kind of in this weird space where they've got Theo's regime. Joe Madden, he's with the Angels, which scares me as a Mariners fan. I think that
right.
Joe Madden with that lineup, I just don't think you can go wrong. I mean, with Ohtani, with Trout, you have that pitching staff now that's pretty good. And then you add Joe Madden, and he's a character in itself.
Oh yeah.
The Angels scare me big time. The Angels scare me a little bit more than even the Astros, because the Astros have their own problems, even though, the Astros are the Astros.
Yeah. And just a note on the AL West. I mean, it reminds me of like 2010 NFC West in the NFL, when it was like, who's going to make it? Like, who's going to be the 7-9 team to make it? And to think like how good the A's were last year, but then how surprisingly not as good the Angels were just in that short season. But to see like the Angels are hot right off the bat. The A's, I mean, they didn't start out great against the Astros, who are also in the division, but the A's could very well be the number 1 team in the AL West again. So then like the top 3 hopefully as a Mariners fan, for the whole, it's just like a race to find number 1 and 2. Like, I mean, we don't hear a ton about the Rangers except for their stadium is fully open, but it's a good competitive division. Like, even if I could see the Mariners doing the classic, like within 5 games of the playoffs again. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we're 5 games in, like into the playoffs, but I think it's going to be really tight.
Yeah, I do too. I think that the Rangers are probably my team that is going to flame out here. I mean, they started 1-3, potentially 1-4 after tonight, but the Rangers are a team that they don't have they don't, to me, I think they're probably they're going to struggle. I mean, they just traded Odor to the Yankees. So you got Odor to the Yankees, you're offloading, you didn't sign anybody in free agency. So, Joey Gallo's another guy that they could potentially move, but looking at their lineup, it just is a lineup of we're just patching something together and waiting until next year. One guy I do want to talk about though that the Angels got over the summer is or over the winter is Jose Iglesias. I think that he is a dynamite shortstop and he can hit around 270, 260, 270. So he can hold his own in the middle of the lineup. But, that defensive plus at a shortstop is going to be really great for the Angels. And one scary thing that I heard from Mike Trout yesterday is he's hitting 368. He's already hit 2 bombs in 5 games. And he said, oh yeah, a reporter asked him if he was feeling good at the beginning of the season after a hot start. And he told the reporter that he's just now finding his swing. So if that doesn't scare you as a Mariners fan, then unfortunately you need to stop reading some of the news because Mike Trout is just now feeling good about his swing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is scary to hear because I feel like Trout, just as a Major League Baseball fan, it's like, yeah, he's one of the top guys, but then as an AL West competitor, we're like, oh man, that's way too close for comfort. And so Trout's always there. Like, whether the Angels are good, that Trout is going to have, he's just going to top his stats every year. And so adding guys with skill like Jose Iglesias and just adding to that lineup, like I think they finally have pitchers, just more depth there. And I think that the Angels, they've looked good just to start off. So yeah, I think adding a guy like that, I think that again, like attractiveness to a team, I think Trout has that for the Angels. And yeah, just additions like that, I think are really what makes or breaks a team to just propel and just keep doing well.
Yeah, one thing that I'm never going to get over is how close we were to sign as the Mariners organization signing Shohei Ohtani.
Oh my gosh, I think about that every time either I turn on a game or see his name in an ad or
people just kind of like let that go. I am not over that. I'm not over that we offered him more money in more years and he still signed with the Angels. And he just threw, I think he threw 102 on Sunday. He threw 102 and in the same inning, he hit a 450-foot home run.
I couldn't believe that.
I was so upset. Like when I heard that, I was like, okay, that's the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, I hate this guy.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I could not believe it. As a Mariners fan, there's been a lot of disappointments, but I think that we've kind of raised our level of we've lowered our level of expectations so much over the past 15 years that that's the new normal. And so when I heard that the Mariners were one of the final candidates, because he was looking for a West Coast team, Ohtani was, to come to Major League Baseball. And when I found out that the Mariners were one of the final teams, I could not believe it. And I had my hopes so high that I could not believe that we were actually in the running. And then when it was like, I felt like in the grand scheme of Ohtani trying to make his decision, it was actually like 15 minutes that he was considering the Mariners. But then he decided on the Angels, and I swear I see more stats for him. Like, yeah, the other day, 102 miles per hour, and then he just goes and hits a bomb. I see stats like that all the time. And those are the things that stick with me as a mad Mariners fan.
Yeah, 100%. And he's that dude now. He is. And by the way, we're playing each other in fantasy the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We have we're both the highest scoring teams in our league playing each other, which always just makes me so upset. Like playing people that score the most points and you're the second most points and then you lose. Like I have Ohtani. The reason why I bring this up, I have Ohtani, and you can use him as a pitcher or a hitter. The problem is like he takes a spot on either like the hitting or the pitching. So you have to like drop somebody if you switch them. Super confusing, super hard to have him on your team. He like, obviously he's an outstanding talent, but
yeah,
I can't keep up with like where I want him at in my lineup. And so he makes me drop people that I don't want to drop all the time. So I'm double mad at Ohtani because not only is he screwing my actual team, he's screwing my fantasy team as well.
Definitely tough to eat up a roster spot there. I have to say one note on fantasy. I was looking through all the other matchups in our league, and just we have to say it is nice to have an 8-person league because every roster is full of starters, which is really nice. But yeah, I was looking through and I couldn't believe our score is so high, like both of us. And I was looking at these other teams and I was like, I mean, you and I pretty much have first and second locked up right off the bat if these are the kind of numbers that we're putting up. But yeah, it sucks in a situation like this that one of us has to lose. And I'm finally like, I think I'm figuring out how, like, I'm being a good fantasy manager. I'm like, okay, I got this. I'm like, first thing I do every morning, my alarm goes off, I check my lineup, and then I'm gonna lose after putting up like 250 fantasy baseball points, and all these other teams have like maybe 110.
Yeah. Also, fantasy baseball is just a grind. Like fantasy football, you check your lineup on like Saturday night, maybe even Friday, or like you check it Wednesday and Saturday. You check it before the Thursday night game, make sure you have your starters in, and then Saturday you can check it again. Fantasy baseball is a 7 days a week, 24-hour thing. Like you have to be, I mean, not only are you messing with your lineups, but you're making sure that they're in the starting lineup every day. So you have to switch them out if they're not starting that day.
Yeah.
If they're on the IL randomly, if they get hurt, if they're day to day. This is an everyday thing. I feel like I should be paid for this part-time job that we entered into.
Oh, we should. Like, I actually can't believe it. And last season, it was such a quick season. And like, I mean, we were just getting off the ground with the podcast, let alone like, I was like, yeah, I'll play fantasy baseball. And before we knew it, we were 15 games in. So that was a quarter of last season. And I hadn't logged in and I forgot my password. I didn't check my team once. And so I was so far in last place that I went on a run of like, I won like 5 or 7 in a row and it didn't even matter. And let alone like, I didn't know who was on my team. So this year, like, to start out, I'm checking every day. I'm really trying to be on top of it, but it's a grind nonetheless.
It is a 100% a grind. You know what? I think that you had it right. I think I might lose my password in the middle of the season. We'll see how that goes.
Just so you can say that at the end, like, oh man, I just barely missed the playoffs because I went on vacation. I didn't have internet.
Ooh, I missed the playoffs by one game. Ooh,
yeah,
man, that sucks. One team that I did want to bring up on this podcast is the Toronto Blue Jays. I think they are my pick to win the AL and go to the World Series this year. And I genuinely think they have all of the pieces to do it. And I wanted your thoughts on how you think. They're still young. They literally have Kevin Biggio. They have Vlad Guerrero Jr. They have Bo Bichette. They're all in their first and second year still. So they're still really, really young. But the amount of starters that they received, pitching starters, you have now Steven Matz, you've got Ryu, you got Ross Stripling. They have a really, really underrated lineup now of starting pitching and that I think might go super far. So I wanted to know your thoughts on the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, I kind of couldn't believe what they were doing in the offseason. And I was like, oh man, they're going to be competitors. And I could definitely see that winning the AL, or just the American League in general. But yeah, like I couldn't believe all of a sudden they got Guerrero Jr. and I was like, well, that's a good hitter right there. And I think that they're kind of underrated. Maybe it's because they're up there in Canada, and I mean there's so much attention around a lot of other teams actually. Like I feel like there's somehow a lot of good baseball teams right now. But yeah, just having that depth in pitching, and I think it's always been apparent as a Mariners fan. Every time the Blue Jays go to Safeco Field, it's full of Blue Jays fans from Vancouver. It's ridiculous.
The worst.
And it's the worst. Like one time I was watching on TV and they actually said it was like 60-40% with more Blue Jays fans than Mariners fans. But yeah, again, I think just like the depth of their pitching lineup, what they did in the offseason. I'm just looking through their roster right now, but Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio, like these guys are all people who can really like step up and do work. And I think that if they get that spark and just keep rolling through this season, I think they'll definitely be contenders at the end.
Yeah. Also, they have that Teoscar Hernandez and Marcus Semien, who was traded from
Semien.
The Athletics. I mean, they have all of these just like weird. It feels like they are the Oakland Athletics. They have all of the right pieces. And they're none of the guys that you would expect to be on a championship team. But
well, that's the thing. I kind of couldn't believe how they got all these guys. It seemed like kind of out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I know that guy. Oh, I know that guy. Oh, they're all on the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I really don't. I mean, seeing their lineup, like it's filthy. It's really, I mean, seeing Hernandez in the lineup with Semien, Gurriel, Guerrero, and then Bichette, they're actually going to be like a super electric lineup. I'm excited to see it. And Teoscar Hernandez has been one of the most underrated players in the last like 4 years. Nobody talks about him, and he hit 289 at the end of last season, and he also had 26 home runs in 2019, and still nobody really talks about him. And he's like a defensive specialist. So I really like this guy. I think he had a great 2020 in the COVID year, and he's off to a great start already with a bomb in his first 4 games. So excited to see what the Blue Jays can do. But man, the American League is filthy this year.
American League is definitely full of good teams. I think there's a little more separation in the National League. But yeah, teams like this, I think especially the Blue Jays, they'll make some noise. And it's cool to see guys doing what they're doing right off the bat. Before we get into March Madness as that wrapped up, I have to get just a brief overview, or maybe you can dive in however you want to go, but we have to hear about your love-hate relationship with Root Sports, because I definitely know there's a little bit of fire under that one. And if anybody follows Clayton Panzeri, Clay Washed Up on Twitter, you've definitely witnessed that.
Yeah, like I've cooled down because I feel like, you know what, like it's kind of a losing battle. And it's not even a Root Sports, I've come to find out. It's like the MLB blacking out games. But my biggest thing is the MLB needs to grow. Like it's a game that unfortunately is dying, and it's dying specifically in youth sports. So there's less people signing up for Little League. There's less people going to youth camps for baseball. And so what the Major League Baseball front office has to do is get more eyeballs on baseball, get more highlights out there, make sure that the highlights are on Twitter as soon as they happen, make sure the highlights are on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, exactly like the NBA does. As soon as somebody posterizes somebody or somebody dunks on somebody else in the NBA, 10 seconds later, I see it on my feed on Instagram.
Oh yeah, I love it.
The MLB has these crazy restrictions on the rights to the video. And so lo and behold, this affects Root Sports, where Root Sports blacks out games. And on top of that, they don't have a streaming service. So the service that the Mariners play on is Root Sports in the Northwest. And so you have to have cable to watch Mariners games, which nobody has cable anymore. Cable is literally dying. cable literally has a percentage of the whole like user group dying every single year. And Root Sports has yet to come up with a solution for streaming services. So you just don't get to watch. You don't get to watch games. And, that's not the worst for us because we played on radio or whatever. But really my like gripe comes from like, what about the kids who don't, are 7, 8 years old that don't want to listen on freaking radio or whatever? They didn't grow up like that. So they just don't watch baseball. So it's a shame that the root sports and, the MLB can't figure out blackouts and streaming and everything. It's been going on for so long at this point. Like, I just don't understand how in 2021, you cannot watch live baseball. That just sounds absurd to me.
It is absurd. And I really can't believe it. And like you said, like all these kids are just not going to be able to watch it. And I mean, they're on, screens all the time, but in this new generation of parents that are cord cutting, I mean, I'm not going to just sign up for cable as soon as I have a kid. You're probably not just going to get cable all of a sudden whenever, we're just in that next generation. And I mean, our parents have cable and I'll use their login for some things, but you can't even go online and log in to Root Sports to watch a game, let alone use it for YouTube TV or Hulu Live, or of all places, MLB TV. I don't know what the answer is, and I don't even watch that much NBA, but it's all over my Twitter feed, Instagram, everywhere. And, what's the answer? Baseball has to do something, and we could do a deep dive on Rob Manfred and how much he sucks, but you cannot deny streaming services, Major League Baseball, and then complain about America's pastime dying.
That's exactly my gripe is you can't complain about, people not going to games or whatever and kids not being interested and then blackout games because you need more money because the TV deals are crazy. Listen, I promise you, it is not more profitable to go cable than it is to offer a whatever dollar amount you set for us in the Northwest or wherever, to set a dollar amount where we can stream games. I will, all the people with money now, all of us, 20 something year olds or 30 year olds, we want to freaking stream a game. We have Hulu Live or YouTube Live or whatever streaming service for live TV you have. I mean, we're ready to pay you, take our money at this point. We're telling you to take our money, and still they're like, nope, you just got to go get cable. Sorry. It's no, we're not going to do that.
Even if they don't bundle it, I'll pay for a monthly subscription to a Root Sports streaming service that's $10 a month, because I could use it for just about half the year between Mariners games and then maybe some Friday Night Lights.
And the craziest part is now the new NHL team, the Kraken, are going to be on Root Sports.
I could not believe when they announced that. I jumped on your bandwagon when the Kraken announced that.
I raged so hard. I was like, oh, they're gonna take hockey away from us now. Just wait till they announce the Sonics are coming back and Root Sports has the Sonics. So we get to miss out on 3
just flipping tables everywhere.
We get to miss out on 3 seasons of sports because Root Sports can't come out with Root Sports Plus or whatever and charge us 10, 15, 20 bucks a month to watch the streaming service, so it's a bummer. I used to be way more mad about this. I've come to terms with it, just never be streaming, but it feels like such a simple fix. Everybody else can figure it out, and NBA, can figure it out. Why can't the MLB figure it out? It's by far the most profitable league that we have. They have 162 games. Ad revenue is through the freaking roof. So, I can't believe we can't figure it out, but hopefully by the time we have kids and our kids have kids, maybe they can stream freaking Root Sports.
Yeah, we're probably going to be 75 and the Mariners maybe
hopefully we do this podcast hopefully we do this podcast in 50 years and I can rage again on why we don't have it and talk like an old man.
We'll jumpstart it if it's not still going, just to have a platform.
I'll spend all my retirement money just having a TV service that plays Mariners, NHL, and the Sonics. That's it.
That's our lifetime side hustle, is just trying to be able to stream Mariners games and trying to find a way. Well,
that's exactly it.
with a pretty electric weekend of sports. We're a week into baseball. Time to dive into our only segment for this week because it's the most relevant and most important. We're going to jump outside the diamond, and we have to talk about March Madness as it just wrapped up on Monday night with the Baylor Bears having quite the performance and being crowned the 2021 national champions.
Yeah, I mean, they were a absolute wagon. They were not going to be beat by. I actually haven't seen that good of a performance by a national championship in basketball for a long, long time. Like that was as dominant as it gets.
And there's been some great teams. Obviously, you have your Dukes, your UNC, like all these teams that, you know, you're suspected number ones that just go out there and you're pretty confident that they're going to win all season, or, you know, all the Indiana schools, and especially like with the tournament being in Indianapolis, like that was talked about a lot. But seeing a team, I haven't seen a team that dominant, that physical, really in the just right out of the gates on Monday night. They were such a physical team, and it looked like Gonzaga couldn't even get shots off if they tried.
Which was the craziest part because Gonzaga, it's not like Gonzaga was any slouch. I mean, they were coming in undefeated, and they were not taking, you know, it lightly. Yes, they play in the WCC, but I can really say that this feels like it was the best Gonzaga team that we've ever seen. And we've seen some pretty dang good teams, but top to bottom, depth wise, I truly believe this was the best Gonzaga team that we've seen by far. Jalen Suggs is going to go in the lottery. He's going to go top 5. You're going to see Kispert get drafted. You're going to see Timmy possibly come back to Gonzaga, but Timmy potentially going in the draft in the first round as well. So you have 3 first-round picks on your team, and the other 2 were 5-star recruits. So, I mean, it was just a loaded lineup. So it was kind of a bummer, you know, being from Spokane and seeing the Zags make it that far, just like 2017 and losing. But I really had no shame because Baylor was just absolutely insane. I mean, for the first 6 minutes, I swear they didn't miss a shot. And it wasn't like they were taking cheap shots. I mean, they were taking like fadeaway jumpers from the 3-point line and drilling them. So, you know, sometimes you just meet a buzzsaw, and it feels like Gonzaga did that. It's not even like they played that bad, truly. Baylor was just so much better.
And I agree. I think that, like, watching the tournaments, I mean, I don't follow super close, especially like I'm not in Spokane like you are. So I'm sure you're a lot more surrounded with Gonzaga, like airtime and everything. But from what I knew and from what I had watched, like I believed that this was Gonzaga's year. I think this was the best team that they've had in a long time. They looked so dominant all tournament. I mean, even that matchup against UCLA on Saturday night, like UCLA had a really, really good team, and they definitely gave Gonzaga a run for their money. But I still think that was a competitive game that Gonzaga came out and really played. And obviously with that buzzer beater right at the end, I mean, to move on into the championship, like that was so electric. But watching them play against that Baylor team, I don't know how, like, Gonzaga couldn't get rebounds. They weren't even making their normal free throws. That, like, in the end of the game, which I don't know if it would have made the difference or not, but they missed 4 free throws in a row that would have put them down by 10. They would have only had a 10-point gap with like 2 or 3 minutes left. And I think that could have been the shift that they needed, just like that last final spark right at the end. But they couldn't even get free throws, let alone get boards. And I think his name was Vital on
oh my gosh,
Baylor.
That
what
dude.
A unit.
he really is just a giant dude. But he's like 24 or something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, no excuses for the Zags, but and I will give all the credit to Baylor any day. I truly believe they're like one of the best teams I've ever seen in the national championship game. they were flawless. They hit shots. They had 16 offensive rebounds. Since when can you out rebound a team like Gonzaga, who has Drew Timme, and you've got I forget the kid's name from Gonzaga Prep, but you've got all of these kids that, I mean, they haven't been out rebounded ever. And you come into the game and get 16 offensive rebounds, 16 more chances at second chance shots. I mean, just crazy. So, and so one thing I will say is, and I thinking back to this, the UCLA game was amazing. It truly, Gonzaga UCLA is going to go down as a classic March Madness game, with Suggs buzzer beater.
They'll have that on the reel forever.
So good. And UCLA came out and gave their best. They almost shot 70% from the floor. So that just shows you how good they were. And they were throwing up more mid-range jumpers than I've ever seen a team throw. But going into overtime 2 days earlier before the national championship, in the amount of emotions that were in that game for the Final Four, and then going to the championship, you almost felt like a letdown, like this was coming, because there's just, it took everything in Gonzaga to win that game on Saturday. So to come back on Monday and play a team like Baylor, who looks like they work out with the football team.
Oh my God.
Absolutely. Like a task that no one could complete.
No, all those guys were jacked. And like, I think really that was the competitive advantage that Baylor had, because it's not like the Gonzaga guys. They were under the boards, like they were there for the rebounds, but I think Baylor just had something in them. Like they wanted it more. I think that emotional aspect coming off a Saturday, I think that was a big game changer, but it never looked like Gonzaga had the wind in their sails. Like they were pretty deflated, and I never saw the momentum shift in their favor really at any point. Like I was really happy to see going into halftime. I was like, okay, they have to close the gap. Like gotta have 10 points to be able to come out on the second half and really do something. And they did. So I was pretty encouraged right there. And then, I mean, second half was just even more than the first half.
Yeah. And I mean, Gonzaga went down 9-0 with 3 minutes into the game. And for a team like Baylor, that was the closest it ever got. And so unfortunately, it wasn't that great of a national championship game with, the ups and the downs and the lead changes and things like that, which kind of sucks. But, hats off to Baylor. They absolutely crushed it. They deserved a national championship. They went out there and, I mean, there's nothing anybody could do on that night to make them lose, because I don't know one team. I can't even think of one team that would have, let that within. Gonzaga was down 10 at halftime, and I thought that was the biggest win of the night. I thought them being down 10 was seriously like a stroke of luck, because that was the only shot that they had. And then, Baylor went on to go on like an 8-0 run to start the second half again. And I was like, okay, well, there we go.
Yeah. So seeing that Baylor team, like I was as confident as I was that this was Gonzaga's year. And that I think that part of me, or I think that the thought for everybody was that this was the best Gonzaga team. So this is their year. But I think it was easy because of that to ignore how good Baylor was. I would put Baylor up against any team right now again, and I would guarantee that they would win. Obviously, they're the national champions, but I mean, any team, even if you think of past national champions, if you put them up against that team, I think Baylor could compete with anybody easily, just within the last 10 years of national champions, if not across the board.
The craziest part too is like their starting center literally fouled out with 9 minutes left in the second half.
Oh yeah. I mean, and speaking of like how physical it was, guys were putting up like 2 or 3 fouls in the first 10 minutes of the first half.
Yeah. Jalen Suggs had 2 fouls with 15 minutes to go in the second half, or in the first half.
Yeah.
And he finished with 2 fouls, which is great. And he was able to play the rest of the game, but I mean, just foul trouble all around. It was a nightmare start for Gonzaga. They made their first actual bucket, like was 7 minutes into the game or something like that.
I couldn't believe that.
It was crazy. It was to hold that offensive powerhouse to 0 points in 7 minutes was a win in itself. So yeah, hats off to Baylor. It was fun seeing Gonzaga have another run. They'll be back. They just got another top 5 recruit, so I'm sure that they'll be back in the next couple of years, and we'll see how good Mark Few's teams can be. Hopefully Mark Few can get over the hump, because I know that there's a lot of people that are not big fans right now.
Yeah, I really hope, and I think that his commitment to the program for 22 years, I think that's really big for a program. I mean, it was cool to see the coaches on the sideline, Coach Drew for Baylor, before the game, and just he's been with the team since 2003, and like props to him for rebuilding the team and getting them to this point. Like that was just really cool to see. Both really good coaches, just good guys, but I hope that Mark Few does have another shot in the next 2 or 3 seasons, if not sooner.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be the thing. It was 2017 the last time they went to the championship, so hopefully it doesn't take 4 years to get back.
Yeah.
But that's just college basketball for you. I think March Madness is the craziest event that could ever happen. Anything could happen once you get in that tournament. But I was just happy to see the tournament finish. I was not positive that we were going to get, after seeing like VCU back out after some COVID protocol, I made me a little nervous for the rest of the tournament, but I'm just glad we got to see all 32 games or whatever.
Yeah, that was really refreshing, especially after last year. I think that one of the things that really made 2021 feel like it was going in the right direction and that we were finally coming out of this was watching March Madness in that round of 64 and just seeing like all the games, and knowing that no work was going to get done because you just had basketball on
Yeah.
your laptop, was on, like you were just on the couch, and just seeing that like made it feel so normal. And so I was really happy to see the bubble system that they created in Indianapolis. I think that they did a really good job using Lucas Oil Stadium. I think that was really cool, and to see us get all the way through it. Now we have a Super Bowl completed this season, so NFL season was complete. We have March Madness all the way through that with so many teams coming in and out of there, and a start to baseball season on time just feels good.
Yeah, it feels like the world is finally starting to get back to normal a little bit. Sports are some of the first things. I know there's a lot of hate for like athletes skipping the line and getting, COVID vaccines first or whatever, but man, I just feel like sports gives everybody so much hope for the future, and it's so optimistic to see sports being played that I would not mind being skipped in line for some of these athletes just to have sports back and continue to be back, because I know that baseball struggled a little bit. The Mets and the Nationals didn't play their first series, so hopefully that's just an isolated incident, but I would be totally fine with the athletes skipping the line, because I think that they give the United States and the rest of the world a little bit of entertainment to look at once everything's back to normal.
Yeah, it definitely feels good to have everything back, and it's fun. We're a week into baseball. It feels normal. It was good to be back in the stands. It felt like a normal Mariners game for the capacity of fans that's normally there. With they had 25%, so 9,000 fans, but just to have that hot dog again, that kettle corn. Some of you guys might have seen the live video last Friday night. That was just a lot of fun, and it just feels like everything's normal, especially going into a summer full of baseball, full of sports. We have some off-season football stuff going, and so it's just good to be back.
100%. There is no better feeling than spring is in the air. It's getting warmer outside. I know Spokane's supposed to be in the 70s consistently starting next week.
Go.
So that is, oh man, like after it feels like COVID's already lasted 5 years, but even worse, it feels like the weather has kind of been on COVID's side as well, where it wasn't that hot outside last year. It just feels like it wasn't that nice outside. And even if you could go outside, people were trying to shelter in place and be safe. So it feels like we'll get maybe not 100% normal summer, but it will be pretty close, and I'll take pretty close any day after the couple of years we've had.
Yeah, pretty close sounds good to me. It's refreshing that everything's coming back right as we kick off summer, but I know you guys probably missed Duncan this week, but it was fun for Clayton to jump on and be my interim co-host this week, talk all things first week of baseball. He'll definitely be back during the baseball season. Hopefully we have a lot of good highlights for the Mariners to report on. And being a Spokane guy, growing up around Gonzaga, it's cool to recap a pretty wild March Madness with him. Definitely a lot of highlights taken away. Really good teams, a lot of competition in that. But Clay, thanks for coming on this week.
Absolutely. I'm happy to come on Climb the Ladder. I love the Climb the Ladder podcast.
A lot of fun. And if anybody hasn't heard any of the other episodes with Clayton, when he's been on a couple times in the past, make sure that you go check out the Way Out Here podcast, also part of the Washed Up Network. My favorite, other than Climb the Ladder, don't tell any of the other Washed Up Network podcasts, but always entertaining. I was listening earlier today, and never gets old. So Clayton, if you want to throw in just a couple highlights or socials where they can find any of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to @WayOutHerePod. We have all of our podcasts on YouTube. We also have a Facebook group that we have fun in and interact with everybody. But yeah, if we just have a comedy podcast. We talk about trending topics. So if you need, 30, 45 minutes of comedic relief in your day, come join the Way Out Here podcast. And we have I will say, we have a wild guest coming on Thursday. We have no idea what's going to happen. So tune in this Thursday for the newest episode of the Way Out Here podcast, because we don't even know what's going to happen. This guy that's coming on is a little bit of a wild card. So we're all gonna enjoy this together.
Love that. Yeah, I can't wait for that one. And like Clayton said, you guys have to go search Way Out Here podcast on Facebook. That's like highlight of every one of my days, is seeing notifications and just, you never know what you're going to listen to. You never know what you're going to see. And so I can't wait for Thursday's episode. We release Climb the Ladder every Wednesday, and Way Out Here comes out every Thursday. So back-to-back days for you guys to fill all your podcast needs right there.
Exactly. You can't go without listening to Climb the Ladder on Wednesday and then Way Out Here Thursday. Get all your baseball talk in on Wednesday, and then, laugh on some Thursdays for pre-Friday.
Yeah, and get ready, because you literally won't stop laughing to Way Out Here. So hopefully we can fill your sports void, and then you can get some comedic relief from Way Out Here. But with that, Clayton, thank you again for coming on today. And as always, let's climb the ladder.